Hey Internet, this is Tim Clicks. I'm on the planet to build a better planet, and today we are going to learn some Rust. This tutorial is designed for people who are just curious about the language. They might have played around with it a little bit. You won't need the compiler. In fact, everything is going to be available to run in your browser. And so if you're just kind of wondering whether or not Rust is for you, this might be something to check out. We're going to be implementing a little program. We're going to be counting words in text. This will be something that is quite useful for you to kind of get a sense for like what Rust is all about, and hopefully give you an idea of not just the imperative side of the language, but also sort of some of its functional influences as well. Rust kind of inherits a little bit from the functional paradigm, even though it is historically called a systems programming language. So sit down, relax. Uh, this probably won't be too long, maybe 15, maybe 20 minutes. The other thing to note if you are on the live stream is that I'm going to try to treat this as essentially the rough cut for a polished edited tutorial published on YouTube. And so I will, and so essentially you kind of get the first cut. That might mean that there is sort of less interaction with the audience than I would like, but hopefully there will still be opportunities for comments and questions as well. Okay, just about to get started, so let's go. Apologies, I just need to run around kind of mentally remembering which button to push, and hi to everybody who is hi to everyone who is commenting. Please do add your comments and responses and feedback. It's always actually a real boost. It kind of keeps the energy alive. And but right now we need to actually code some Rust. So let's do that. I've got the Rust playground up, and it provides the ability for me to run Rust right now. And so to start, I can just actually create a permanent link and post in the comments. We can actually, and so that would send you directly to the code that I'm writing. And you can see if you are brand new to the language that Rust executes within a main function, and there's this print line or print ln thing, kind of a weird exclamation mark, but kind of ignore that for now. There is a string, looks kind of ordinary except for the fact that we've got Unicode inside it, which is quite nice, and a semicolon at the end. The exclamation mark is an indicator to Rust programmers that they're dealing with a macro. A macro is sort of like a function, except instead of returning a value, it returns more code. And for technical reasons, primarily because println has quite a lot of functionality. So we could, for example, create a variable name here, and let's replace that with Tim. And println kind of has a few tricks up its sleeve that a normal function wouldn't able to do by itself, and so that's why it's implemented as a macro. We can, but we're actually really interested in this word count business, or at least that's what it says on the banner at the top, like on the title. So we should like count words. To count words, we need some text. I've got a little bit of example text. I'll just delete all of this, and here's my example text, and here we go. Rust is an empowering programming language. When you learn Rust, you are empowered to build reliable and efficient software. Rust comes with a nice with high performance, a helpful compiler, a nice build system, and a cute mascot. What else could you want from a programming language? Uh, so we need to figure out how many words are in this thing. And I also want to teach you a little bit about Rust. So here's my value of the variable, and I've got text, and then text that is strings that are represented as string literals have methods on them which are defined within what is known as a string slice. So we sort of a slice inside some bytes that happen to be guaranteed to be UTF-8 encoded. And if I go into the into this stir, so here's our string slices, and there's a whole bunch of methods here. And the one that we actually want is split whitespace, or in fact, we could just split ASCII whitespace. And what this is going to do is give us back an iterator, which will iterate over, which will provide like sort of subslices for each word. And I'm going to need to change this. So we're not going to get at our word count directly. There's no method for like count words for me, please, Rust. Instead, we can show off some of Rust's features. A variable needs to be declared as mutable if you require mutation, or if you need to change it after it has been initially set. And I'm going to do for word in text split whitespace, or I could have used the ASCII whitespace, which is slightly faster, except it doesn't understand Unicode as well. It will ignore things that are not spaces and so forth. Word counts, actually just word count singular probably would have worked. And we increment that by 1. And here is my word count. This isn't a particularly attractive implementation of what we want to achieve, but it's a good place to start. There are 36 words in our little piece of text, and you know what? We can do better. So this is something that looks a little bit. This code here. In fact, I might click the share button as well, just to share where we're up to with everyone who's joined us. And the next stage will be, how can we create something that is slightly more idiomatic Rust? In fact, we can, and I mentioned that we can use functional programming. I want to comment out my old code. A whitespace, this is an iterator, and I can do something interesting, which is I can apply the map function, which takes an anonymous function as an input and will apply that to every result. So what I want to do here is essentially ignore the input and push 1 and then sum up the result. Let's see if that is going to get me what I would like. Now we don't need mutation because we're not going to adjust that. Let's see if this is type annotations are needed. Okay. So we're not consider how the Rust doesn't quite have enough information to understand exactly which types we need. So we'll kind of provide a hint. It's like we really want word count to be an integer. Some can return multiple integer types. We could have asked for an unsigned integer if we wanted to, but for whatever reason, we'll just use I32, which we get the same result. And if you care about performance and space complexity, what we have done here is used a declarative style and told the compiler that we don't care how you implement this, just implement it in the fastest way possible. And this style, sort of a more functional style, is, I would say, much more idiomatic Rust. Uh, you'll find yourself looking at Rust code, and if you haven't seen the use of what is known as higher order functions before, Rust can feel a little bit alien to you. There is one other thing though. It's like, well, what if we would actually like to map, like count the number of times a particular word appeared? So now I want to go over for every word in text split white space. So we'll just do this the old way again. I find it relatively simple. What am I saying? I find it simpler to implement the imperative style first and then sort of simplify with a functional declarative style just while I'm getting my head around it. So what we want is to count all these words, and I want to associate each word with a count. To do that, I'm going to do a tiny bit of natural language preprocessing, which is that I want to strip away the any punctuation characters, and I want to sort of demonstrate a little bit more of the capabilities that are provided by strings, and the specific thing that I want to show you is trim. So trim trims white space. Oh, in fact, there is another one actually. Trim matches is what I was looking for. Which will go and look and try to find whether or not something satisfies a pattern. This is a kind of a complicated, extremely complicated function definition. Trim matches is a method that has a lifetime parameter, this tick A, and a type parameter P. Tick A says that the output string has the same lifetime as the input string self. We're actually returning a subslice of the original, so that means that the lifetimes are sort of bound together, and Rust's type system encodes that. P is some type which implements pattern for the lifetime, and then there's kind of another requirement as well, which is that there is a sub component of the trait. This is getting very, very knotty. That is also required to implement double-ended searcher, which sounds ridiculous, but we're actually pushing a huge amount of information into the type system. So the thing to remember about Rust is that it is going to try to give the compiler as much information as it can in order for your program to be as performant and reliable and hopefully work as efficiently as possible. And if it compiles, it should be correct. Now we're actually looking for something like this. We want trim matches, and then we've got char or car is numeric, which is another function which we want to apply. Except instead of matching on numeric characters, I want to find a method on, or sorry, a function on, sorry, no, there's a method, whether or not it's alphabetic. And so we just retain the alphabetic characters. And let's see if that works. Or is it the other way around? Do I need to... I'll try trimming punctuation. That sort of makes more sense to me. And now the word is updated. And we'll just rebind the subslice and ignore the original one. So this is another part of Rust. We have it's quite common to what is known as shadow variables. So we've replaced the old name with a new name. That means fewer bytes, and the original is essentially no longer accessible to me from line 19 onwards. Now, we need some type which is actually going to be able to store the difference, well, associate, I'll start pause. Now we need some type that can associate a string with a count. The way that you might do this in Python is with something like a dictionary. In JavaScript, it might just be an object. In Rust, we can use a hash map. And it comes from the standard collections hashmap module. And hashmap is parameterized by two types. One is the type of a key, which we'll call string, and the other is the type of the value, which will be a count. In our case, is an integer type. So word counts, it's actually going to be plural now, and this is mutable, is a hash map, and we'll say new. Rust will also ask us for a type, for some type information, and I'm going to say that, in fact, I might just say it's a string slice. One of the quirks with Rust is that it distinguishes between what is known as a string slice, which are references to text, and a string with a capital S. And the which is, for people who know about the way that these things are implemented, is a heap allocated string. The next thing to do is say word counts, and we got this API which word to string, and then let's see what happens here. What I want to do is that I have the current count, and then entry will return an option, which I can unwrap. Which by unwrap, it means like essentially an option type is a type which provides the ability for me to kind of pack in a value, otherwise represent nothingness. And I'll just double check my that I've got the API right. It's all insert. I wondered if I was going to get that wrong. And now we can count is actually a pointer into the hash map. And so we can dereference that and increment count by 1. The last thing that we need to do is tell Rust that we want a debug representation of the counts. It turns out that there are two ways to describe to Rust that you want to convert a type to a string. One is just by asking for what is known as its display, which is for sort of end users. Hash maps don't provide a default implementation of display. They only implement default, which is accessed by this sort of special flag inside print line, the question mark. So let's see if I'm close. I've got a typo, which is not useful. Quite common. 101, trim matches, type mismatch. I wanted a signature note required for. That's a really funky one. What this is saying is that um, there's a lifetimes mismatch, and uh, the between the function that I'm calling and its return type. And so I wonder if I can do something else, which is actually create a function, an anonymous function inside it, which takes the character and which has the argument as being called x here, and then evaluates that argument. Type annotations needed. Mismatch types. Oh gosh. That's we get a different type error. I'm converting things to a string, even though I've said up on line 20 that I only need a string slice. And now I have some counts. Woohoo! Learn software, reliable R with combine lots of singular words. A occurs 4 times and Rust occurs 3 times. So one last trick before I let you go. And that is if you add the hash sign to, or a pound sign, depending on where you're from, you will get a a much nicer output. So there you go. We've been able to count words multiple ways. We've been able to demonstrate some of Rust's features, some of its text handling skills, as well as work our way around some of these kind of like gritty little issues with lifetimes. So I'm kind of like adding a little bit of a warning flag that there are there is learning to do to kind of get you through all of that. But I want to really emphasize, but the reason why we do it is to give the type system as much information as it can to keep your programs as correct as possible. So there we go. I'll just add the last share link with where we got to right at the end. And happy to answer any questions. I hope that you have enjoyed this relatively brief stream. It's been a real pleasure chatting. It's my pleasure. Honestly, it's lots of fun to help, and I'm glad that I have been able to be a tiny bit of a boost for you. Thank you. Okay, everybody. Well, I will wrap up. It's been a pleasure. Unfortunately, it's also very late for me. I meant to get this going a lot earlier. It's now nearly midnight, so I should probably wrap up. And I wish you a pleasant day, pleasant evening, and I hope that the rest of your year goes really well. In fact, let's not focus on the whole year. Let's just focus on this week. I hope that the week has some good news left for you. Take care. Bye bye.